All right, welcome back everybody to the Bad MMA Math podcast. I think we are on episode 7 now. I might have to double check that. Apologies that I'm a bit late getting this one out. I have been so sick over the last few days, but we're here now and I think we've got a pretty good one today. Anyway, over the last few days, the MMA community on the whole has been going absolutely out of their minds collectively. I think we're kind of at the point now where we just want the talking to end and the fighting to start. We've still got another 10 days until the next fight card, but like I said, things are getting wild amongst the community and I think we just need something to happen at this point. Anyway, so I was actually kind of tempted to have a look at the UFC card that is happening in a week or so, but with the rate of dropouts that we had last year, I've kind of made a promise to myself to maybe do these at the 11th hour from now on. I'm really sick and tired of putting deep breakdowns into fights that just end up falling off the cards, so I'm not going to be doing that much this year. Anyway, I digress. So for a little bit of fun, I thought in the meantime, I would have a look at the 10 best prospects, contenders currently in the UFC that are still sporting undefeated records. There are quite a few more than 10, as you probably know, but I'm only going to really deal with fighters that are somewhat relevant or I would be here all day long. I've got no time for scrubs around here. Actually, one or two might slip through, but I'll get to those in a minute. So yeah, as I said, I'm going to look at 10 fighters who have yet to taste defeat in the organization, and I'm going to explain how and possibly why they either keep or lose those O's by the end of 2024. All right, so I'm going to start with one of the easiest ones on the list, Shavkhat Rahkmonov, Laura Sanko's favorite fighter. One of the most well-rounded contenders on this list. Really scary dude. Might actually end up getting a crack at the belt by the end of the year if my predictions come to fruition. Assuming he can actually get anybody else to fight him, might be pretty difficult for him with what he's done so far in the last few years. I do think he is going to get an eliminator at some point this year, probably against somebody like Kamaru Usman. I don't really see him fighting down lower than that. I was maybe potentially thinking Gilbert Burns, but he's got Jack Maddalena, and that's going to be a tough one to get through. So, yeah, probably Kamaru would be a good shot at this point. I don't think Colby or anybody else is going to step up to him. And yeah, if he ends up getting Usman, I can see him winning that fight. This isn't a prime Usman anymore. And then, yeah, I think he'll line himself up for a shot at the belt at the end of the year where whoever he faces as champion, it's not going to be Bilal. It's going to be Leon. So, yeah, if it is Leon, as I'm expecting, I think that fight's going to be close. But, yeah, I like Shavkhat to get the job done and end the year as champion and end the year undefeated. I just think he's too young. I think he's too well-rounded. And while a few O's on this list are going to be slipping down the bog this year, I'd be very surprised if Shavkhat Rahkmonov was one of them. All right, next, Khamzat Chimaev. People actually think I hate this dude, and, I don't really. I just think he's a little bit of a hype merchant, and his fans are just really annoying. Now, if he does get back to fighting regularly this year, I would be very confident that this fraudulent individual would be a dead cert to lose his O this year. He's got no cardio outside of one round, and he's kind of at a point in his career where I think the UFC can't really give him any more layups. There's going to be no more gimmies thrown in his direction, in theory. Thing is, though, he's clearly got problems with his health. The recent Instagram posts have illuminated him looking like he's got some kind of aggressive allergy going on. I'm not sure what the full story is, but it does not look good. So I think we're going to get a very similar year this year to the one we got last year. I think he's going to end up fighting once this year. and by proxy, he's probably going to end up getting a lower level guy to tune up on, coming back from ill health and all that. I don't think he's going to get the five round test against the higher ranked guy that we're all kind of hoping he's going to get to, propel him into that title conversation. So yeah, unless there's like a drastic shift, I think by default, this Weasley guy is going to keep his O for another year by probably just fighting once and probably getting another iffy decision again. Still not over that. All right, speaking of fraudulent individuals, let's get into the decision machine, Movsar Evloev. Yeah, he was extremely lucky in my mind to escape with a win against Diego Lopez earlier on in the year, which, to be fair, has kind of aged like fine wine. That guy's gone on to be an absolute murderer, so that did turn out to be a pretty good win, but he was almost out of there several times. The thing is with Evloev, I do think he's really well-rounded without being too spectacular at anything, but he just has a really bad habit of making every fight tough. Like, he never steamrolls really anyone apart from the lower ranks in the division. And I actually think on this list, he's going to be the first person to lose his O this year, assuming the fight goes ahead. Now, he's booked to go up against Arnold Allen in a 3-rounder on January 20th, who, he gave Max Holloway a serious run for his money. This might be a little bit of partisan bias here, but I think Arnold is going to batter him. I don't like Evloev's stand-up that much, and while Allen doesn't have the greatest tank later in fights usually, he recently did a 5-rounder against Max, so in a 3-rounder, he's going to be able to put the pressure on, and I think, he's going to take Evloev's O at the start of the year. Even if Evloev does actually manage to squeak through that fight, he's going to be looking even higher up, with potential fights against guys like Holloway, Rodriguez, Topuria, who I'm going to get to. And I don't see him beating any of those guys. So yeah, one way or another, by the end of 2024, he's going to have lost at least once. All right, on to Ilia Topuria. A lot of people are actually picking him to beat Alexander Volkanovski in February. I'm not one of them, so I think this one's going to be pretty quick. I'm sticking to my boy here. I really like Ilia, but I think Volk is going to be really determined to fix, a very poor year by his standards, especially the way that it ended for him. And I think he's going to teach Ilia that he's taking a step too soon, too early. For the record, I do think that Ilia is going to be champion at some point. I just don't think it's going to be now. I think this is too soon for him. I actually do think the fight is going to be pretty close and that his stock won't necessarily drop at the end of it. I'm kind of predicting it to go 5 rounds with Volk winning. I'm going to go into more detail about that when I break down the cards later on in the year. But I'm going to say Volk wins 3 rounds out of 5 at least in that fight. I then think that Ilia will have a really good rest of the year. Like, just because he loses his O doesn't mean it's the end for him. He's a very young guy. I think he'll win 1 or 2 more to see out the rest of the year, and then he'll end 2024 back in contention for the belt again in 2025. That's my prediction for Ilia Topuria. I think the O is going to go, but still got a really bright future. All right, I guess I need a female on here because, representation and all that good stuff. Tatiana Suarez. Yeah, the way things are shaping up, it's pretty obvious that they're setting Tatiana up for a title fight at some point in the year. And we know this because she's recently been matched up with Amanda Lemos, who spent the better part of 25 minutes getting ragdolled and given one of the most sustained one-sided beatings in title fight history against the champion Weili. Now imagine if Weili was able to throw her around. What do you think Tatiana's going to do to her? Yeah. I think she's going to come through that one pretty easily, and then she gets a title shot sort of at the midpoint to 3rd quarter of 2024. Now, this one's going to sound a little bit off as a prediction because I do actually think that Zhang is the better fighter, and I explained this when talking about who I think is going to end the champion in every division at the end of 2024 in a video a couple of videos ago. And yeah, I said that I think Tatiana's going to win that fight, even though I think Zhang's a better fighter. And the reason I've kind of come to that conclusion is, you know, Zhang's made a lot of money in the sport already. She's probably a millionaire at this point. She's had pay-per-view points for quite a few cards. You know, she's defended a few times. And, you know, things have a funny way of shifting when you go to bed on Egyptian cotton, you know, instead of whatever poor people sleep on. It's different when that bullseye's on your back. And yeah, I just think that Tatiana's going to have enough hunger and enough size to edge Weili out when they do eventually clash. I do think they'll end up rematching somewhere down the line, and I'm going to get into that little nugget somewhere down the line. And I do want to be wrong about this, but yeah, I just think that it's going to be Tatiana's year. I think she's only going to fight twice, as most female fighters do. And yeah, I think she's going to end the year with 2 wins in a calendar year and keep that 0 intact. Just about. All right, Bo Nickal. Yeah, he's fighting Cody Brundage and is again coming into a fight at over a minus 1,000 favorite. What are we doing here? Like, what is happening? I genuinely believe he's Dana White's son. I'm going to stand by this. And there's no chance in hell that this man loses his undefeated record in this calendar year. It's just going to be one of those default ones. I don't think he's going to fight anyone half decent. He's probably going to get at least 4 more cans to plow through before he's remotely given anyone that you could consider a test. So yeah, as much as I don't like it, he should get a decent step up after he kills Cody, but he won't. And, you know, he's pretty much a certainty to remain undefeated going into next year. Who do you think is going to be next for Nickal after this? I bet you it's going to be GM3. Remember, you heard it here first. Who is below him in the official rankings, by the way, obviously. All right, Muhammed Mokaev. Yeah, this is one I should be a little biased towards as well, obviously being the British fighter. I'm just not convinced with this dude. The win against Elliott was his best win to date, and I really rate Elliott very highly. You know, he's a slippery veteran, very difficult to get out of there. So that really was an impressive win. But he was losing the majority of that fight. In fact, Mokaev always seems to be losing and then manages to grab it out the bag somehow, which I guess you could say is quite impressive in a way. You know, I don't think you can really keep doing that though. Now, I just found out he's due to fight Alex Perez on March the 2nd, which proves to me that the organization are doing everything they can to build this guy and keep him undefeated for now. Perez is literally the most winnable matchup left that they can give him. So I do think Mokaev is going to find him tricky, but is ultimately going to win. But, you know, at that point, he's then going to be solidified as a top 6-7 in the division. And looking at who's above him there, who does he beat at flyweight? Up at that point, you know, or up in those upper echelons. You know, there's Cap up there, there's Nickal, who both brutalize him in my opinion. Kai Kara France, I think, beats him as well. I don't like that. Roy Val destroys him. Obviously, Moreno would do nasty things to him. I guess maybe if they gave him Amir Al-Bazi, he could maybe fare well against him, but he's a little high up, so I don't think it will be him next. I think he's going to squeak past Perez, who hasn't won until 2020, by the way, and then he's going to lose to one of the better guys later on in the year when he's forced to fight up in that upper part of the division. He should not be ranked 8th. He's been pushed way too quickly. And yeah, I think he's going to come unraveled in 2024, and he's going to lose at least one. I can see that happening. Great fighter though, or decent fighter, decent prospect. All right, yeah. This is another one that I briefly covered when I talked about who I think will end the year as champion in every division in one of my previous videos. So this will be no surprise to anybody who saw that one. I actually think Umar's really, really good. I can be a little bit of a Dagestani hater at times. But if the rumors are true, He's going to be fighting Corey Sandhagen, possibly in Saudi Arabia. I think that's in April, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and if that turns out to be the case, I can see him having that O popped in very uncomfortable circumstances. I don't see how he beats Corey, in any circumstances, unless he gets handed, an incredible robbery of some variety. I don't see it, which, let's be honest, if it does happen in Saudi Arabia, strange prediction, but a very possible potential outcome. So my prediction is predicated on that. If the fight doesn't happen and he fights kind of a few people that are more around his place in the rankings, wouldn't that be something? I think he'll remain undefeated in those circumstances. If he fights guys that are in and around 8th to 10th, I can see him staying undefeated until the end of the year. But if he fights Corey, which, rumors are very strong, I think he loses quite dominantly, which is, there's no shame in that. Corey's elite, one of the best fighters, not just in the division, but in the entire organization. I predicted the guy to finish the year on the top of the mountain. So, ratings if he does take that fight, very difficult one. But yeah, I think if he comes up against Corey, his O is gone. All right, Michael Moraes. This is a tricky one. Without knowing much at this point about who he's potentially going to be lined up with next year, it's quite a risky one. Let me just pull up his topology here and see who's around him in the rankings. Yeah, you got Nicholas Dalby is someone I expect could be next. He's right next to him in the unofficial rankings. I do fancy him as well against some of the guys in the lower part of the top 15. Dalby would be tough if you got him. I think it's a tough fight, but I think it would be good stylistically. Fakhretdinov, I guess he could out-tank him. Tough fight, though. I think he'd beat Randy Brown. I think he'd beat Neil Magny, who are kind of in the lower part of the rankings there. When I set out to make this video, I was sure I was gonna say that his O would go, because he's someone who's far from the finished article. His performance against Jake Matthews didn't really do much for me. Didn't really fill me with confidence. Based on who's around him, I'm gonna say he makes it to the end of 2024 still undefeated. Just based on the fact that I don't think he's going to be given a significant step up into the top 10. I think when he gets to that place, I might have a different prediction. But in truth, welterweight is not that elite now. So, yeah, I say that he gets to the end of the year undefeated and cracks the top 10. I think that's what I see happening for Michael Moraes. All right, on to the last person of the 10. Who else could I possibly have last on this list? Despite the belief that this man took more L's than anyone in the sport last year, he still has that O where it matters in the cage. His next fight is against Jeff, or is it Joff Nil? I've heard that said a few times in commentary. I'm going to go with Jeff, who he's actually fighting at UFC 298. Now, as much of an embarrassment as Iangarry is to the gender and to the Irish flag, he's actually talking about repping Brazil now, by the way. And I hope they take him. I'll drive him to the airport myself if that will expedite the process. He took his wife's ex's name. He might as well rep his country as well. Honestly, never heard of anyone doing anything so weird. It's just next level of cuckery around here. Anyway, despite what I think of him as a man, he's a hell of a good fighter, and I do think he's going to beat Neil at UFC 298. But then, this is where it kind of gets interesting after that. Let's look at the rankings. I'd like his chances against Brady, who recently called him out. Covington is somebody who's been saying his name, so I think he'd be interested in taking the fight. I'd favor him against Covington as well, based on his last performance. Gilbert Burns, I'd favor him against him as well. So if he gets any of those guys in his second fight, I think he could remain undefeated past that point as well. He usually fights 3 times a year though, so if he gets any higher than that and gets near like a Rahkmonov or Usman or Leon, I think his O will go in those circumstances. So it very much depends on who he ends up coming up against. I have a feeling he's going to get to the end of the year undefeated. I think he'll fight twice, and I think it will be, like I said, it will be Jeff Neal, and then it will be somebody sort of just below that upper bracket, and that he will get through the end of the year undefeated. But then 2025 is going to be a whole new heap of problems there. But yeah, I think he'll end the year undefeated. All right, so some quick honorable mentions. Rinya Nakamura is somebody that I really like. Absolute beast. I think he's going to keep his 0. Very good wrestler out of Japan, and I don't think he makes it as far as the rankings this year. So him as somebody who keeps his O is definitely a keeper. He'll be fighting people below that. Tatsuro Taira, again, I don't think he's going to get given much of a jump up given his age, and I think he'll probably make it to the end of the year. He'll probably be given somebody just ranked beneath him, and then someone just in that upper top 15. I think he did break into the rankings at the end of the year, but I think he'll fight twice or 3 times and should keep his O by the end of the year. He seems to be improving all the time. Shara, the Pirate. Exciting fighter. I love this goofy dude. The way he fights, though, I think he goes into the fire a little bit too much, and I think if he comes up against someone really, really good, he's going to get caught. Laron Murphy, I think he's going to lose as well. He's cracked into that top 15. It's a very tough division at featherweight. He's got Ige next, which is a really tough fight on its own. Anyone above him, if he gets past, that's going to be really tricky. So I don't love that for him. Murtazakhanov, again, depends on the matchmaking. But he's top 15 now, and the very upper echelon of light heavyweight is pretty good. And I think he's just a rung below those guys. So if he gets matched up with anyone there, he's going to get smacked about. Javid Basharat as well. I think he's going to stay undefeated. Again, I think he's going to be matched up with people just in and around the top 15 that aren't really on his level. And unless something drastic happens and he's forced to step in short notice, I can see him having an undefeated year and keeping that bagel as well. All right, so is there anyone that I forgot? Is there anyone that you agree or disagree with? Your thoughts are always welcome. Anyway, I'll be back with another video in a couple of days. I've got a few ideas in the pipeline. So if there's anything as well that you'd like to see, as I say, I'm always looking for fresh ideas. So give me a shout in the comments or message me at badmmamath on Twitter. Have a look in the windows down in the 2 corners. I'm going to be, as always, giving you some nice podcasts to click onto. So yeah, look out for those. And yeah, like I said, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.